sex just isn't about pleasure. I mean, who is the most recognised sex expert in America? An 85-year-old Jewish grandmother, Dr. Ruth. And God bless her. God bless her, you know. But the point is, she's got to be 85, a grandmother, and a grandmother to kind of be acceptable to talk about sex. Australians' version of Dr. Ruth is when I was there, was this really, really beautiful, hot 35-year-old or 38-year-old woman named Dr. Rosie, yeah, who was a good friend of mine, yeah. Now, so, hey, if we're going to have a woman talking to us about sex, let's have a hottie, is the attitude in Australia. I don't want to hear it from a grandmother. I don't want to hear masturbation techniques from an 85-year-old Jewish granny. I'm sorry, yeah, that's just me. And so what I'm doing right now is also not, it doesn't happen in America. Don't make jokes about sex. It's not a funny topic. It's got to be treated really seriously if and when you talk about it, and we'd really rather that you didn't anyway.
I wonder what your opinion is.
Because it's uncomfortable here.
Right, yeah. And if it's not about pleasure,
what is it about? Open, honest pleasure. I mean, obviously, people do it because they get pleasure. Uh-huh. But they're not letting themselves have the pleasure they're having, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. Like, they get pleasure, but it's not okay to revel in it.
Yeah, it's associated with guilt, it's associated with shame and...
Guilt and shame and wrongness and slut. I hadn't heard the term slut since I was in kindergarten in Australia, which was a century and a half ago. Yeah, and I came to America and it's like, she's a slut. And I went, really? What's that mean? She's had 4 lovers and she's 28. Huh? Yeah, I would guess just, I mean, I run sex and relationship seminars in Australia, and so I talked with literally thousands of people about sex in Oz, and I would say the average 30-year-old female in Australia has had 15 to 25 lovers. Yeah, more at the 25 end. Uh-huh. And some 30 and some more. Yeah. So if a 28-year-old woman was sitting around with a bunch of folk and sex came up as a topic, which it regularly does over coffee in Australia, just like work does and family does and other things do, you know. If a woman was, say, 28 and said, and they came up and she said, I've had sex with 50, I swear to God, the response would be, wow, you haven't been wasting time. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So where are you up to now with it? Yeah, what have you learned?
Right, and here, I mean, take that same situation and put it here. First of all, probably the woman would never feel comfortable enough speaking about how many lovers she had, whether it was 5 or, you know, however many more. Yeah. And I'm curious about how that comes to be, and I think about the way that we treat sex with children. Right. And how sex, death, or birth, even, you know, kids are often curious about these things. When I was teaching preschool, you know, anytime a child would bring up one of these subjects, even in an extremely, what we would consider to be liberal private preschool, you know, other teachers would say, oh, if it was death, for instance, don't talk about that, that's sad. Yeah, if it was sex, it's so taboo that we can't even tell the child anything. Basically, it's like, shut up and talk to your parents about it. And so...
as I understand it, I mean, the culture says, you're ready for sex at 18, but it goes further than that and says, we're not really going to talk to you about it till you're 18. Mm-hmm. And when you're 18, you're too old to talk to about it. Mm-hmm. It's like, again, it's avoidance. That's uncomfortable. Right. Yeah. Uh-huh. It's uncomfortable. And it all links. It all links. Here's another thing with sex and death. If we're denying death and avoiding death, then we have to deny and avoid everything that reminds us of death. And the thing that reminds us of death most is pain. So then we have to deny and avoid and block pain. So then we take painkillers for anything, emotional or whatever. There's ads where some woman is distressed because her carpet isn't clean enough and there's a tablet for it. Right? A medically prescribed tablet for dirty carpet syndrome. So if you're denying pain, then you have to deny discomfort. And that includes emotionally. So if death's uncomfortable, yeah, we're not going to deal with sex because that's pleasure. Because we can't have too much pleasure either. So we're denying death, but we also get to deny life. And guess what? Life's a pleasure. In other words, look, the more you try and... one of the sorry, there's 10 ideas.
I know, it's fine.
Again, after I'd been here for about a year or two, I had two things I started saying about America. It's a flatlining country. And in other words, it's the air-conditioned society. Take off all the hots and all the colds and just have this flat line in between. So when we deny, the more we deny and block death, by definition we have to block pain, we have to block risk, and therefore we have to block our aliveness. We have to block our opportunities, we have to block our choices, we have to block our creativity, and then we go into survival mode, which is fear. And America is a country of fear. My dear friend Hunter S. Thompson's last book was called Kingdom of Fear. Yeah? America lives in fear. There's always an external enemy, there's always an internal enemy. Yeah? Everyone has to have an enemy. So whether you're a left-winger and George Bush is the enemy, or whether you're a right-winger and Barack Obama's the enemy, it's about enemies. Yeah? It's fear. It's fear. And it's the fear that, instead of dealing with our fear of death, if you block that, the fear has to come out somewhere. So it comes out in war and fighting and creating enemies. Equally, living in this extreme, intense consumer society where virtually everyone's trying to sell you everything, but wait, before you call, we'll give you 3 times as much for half as much, and we'll come and give you a free back massage, please buy. I mean, it's just insane, the consumerism. Yeah? God. And again, that's to fill the emptiness instead of satisfying or fulfilling ourselves and having our own pleasure, including sexual, of course. Sex is like the obvious one. But just generally pleasure. This is not a country that has fun. This is not a country where people play or laugh or joke or have leisure. This is the only advanced country in the world that has 2 weeks paid holiday a year, when the rest of the advanced world, which is all of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and God knows how many other countries, has a minimum of 4 weeks fully paid annual holidays. Americans get 2. And 50% of American workers aren't game to take those holidays for fear that their job will disappear. That's a recipe for happiness. Yeah? So then what do we get? We get parents working their heads off, sometimes 2-3 time jobs at once, just to maintain a certain level of life. The kids are abandoned effectively. An American friend of mine gave me the phrase that in America children are abandoned in their own homes. It's a brilliant, brilliant line. And it goes on and on and on. And it just screws things up. Screws things up. I mean, most kids, most college kids, they never talk to their parents. I mean, talk.
Yeah.
They answer questions. And the question, the majority report to me is that the interactions with their parents, basically since they were little kids, was either being told what to do or criticised for how they did it. Yeah? But no hugs, no play, no how's your day, like very judgmental. Very judgmental. Yeah, it's harsh. This is a tough country.
Yeah.
It's a tough culture to live in. Yeah? Obviously there's upsides, you know, there's things that are exciting and creative and sometimes very daring. Yeah, but when it comes to sex and relationships, not a lot. What?
It's just a lot at once. I mean, to have your perspective, which is, you know, sort of outside, and putting all of these things in place and having the connections between them.
Well, my joke is that my perspective is coming from me being a double alien.
A double alien.
I have an alien perspective. I'm an Australian and a legal alien.
Okay.
I definitely have an alien point of view. But see, one of the things that, and I hear you, I mean, this can be shocking for Americans to hear. And I've said things like this to some Americans and even to some friends, and it's really pressed some buttons at times. Mm-hmm. So I need to back up and say, I love this country. I chose, of all the countries in the world, to come here, to live here, to have this experience of living in America because I believe in America. Mm-hmm. I think the Constitution and the Bill of Rights are two of the greatest documents in the history of the world. Up there with the Magna Carta as legal papers, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a heartbreaking country. It's a heartbreaking country. You live one of the serious cultural character traits is constant betrayal. Mm-hmm. Trust is non-existent in this country, virtually non-existent. Yeah, it's very hard to trust people in this country because there's constant betrayal on every level.
Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. I really don't know. But think about it, every president for the last 30 years has betrayed, I think, has lied or betrayed, and lying's a betrayal, mm-hmm. or betrayed us in serious ways, or has broken the law in serious ways. I mean, Reagan and Bush, without doubt, have broken serious international laws. That's a betrayal, not just of America, but the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of relationships, there's betrayal. I think, look, I have pondered this question for a long, long time, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of Americans about it. It fundamentally changed after World War II because it became a superpower, mm-hmm. and it kind of discovered itself in a new way. And power corrupts, and over time, power has corrupted, seriously corrupted, mm-hmm. so that again, power becomes more important than people. Mm-hmm. So if what you want is power and control, then betraying someone's just part of the journey.
Right.
Because you can. Yeah.